Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm the Center Square's state government reporter, Carlene Johnson. Along with me today, our investigative reporter for the Center Square, Washington, TJ Martinell. Okay, TJ, the upshot of the stories we've been uncovering this week, along with our friend at the Undivided podcast, Brandy Cruz, has revealed some potential self-dealing here that might be just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm going to let you lay it out. I will just say that for folks that aren't familiar with the story, I would encourage people to go to our website at the Center Square/Washington and see articles published by you and I this week concerning the community reinvestment program run by the Seattle Urban League, and maybe some people stroking their own friends and family members' backs that shouldn't be. So I'll let you unpack it because you've got the updated story here to let our folks know about.
Yeah, we'll keep it really, really simple. So the community reinvestment program is for lack of a better word, non-whites to get access to mortgage assistance and also have debt forgiveness. And there's all these different qualifying factors for that. But basically, if you don't get it if you look like me. We'll put it that way. Or if you identify as someone who looks like me. So the problem that the allegations are that they are using this money. It's basically favoritism and nepotism, and they're giving it to friends of theirs. They're having people go through mortgage lenders or real estate agents that they know. So it's basically discrimination, but within their own race or within their community. And so that's the allegations that are being made. And what's interesting is that there is Representative Travis Kocher, who sponsored two bills this session around the same time that this stuff was going on, that he argues would have prevented this stuff from happening. And so it's a little technical, but so one of them, House Bill 2058, would require private entities that receive taxpayer dollars through grants to hire a third-party auditor to conduct an audit of how the money is spent. So it would basically be like the same way our state auditor audits state agencies to make sure that they're spending the money appropriately and comes up with ways for them to, better spend their money. That's what they would have to do with this. And so it would keep track of a lot of where the money's going and other stuff like that. House Bill 2059 would do something a little bit different. It would require the entity to disclose certain financial information on their website, like how much money, who works for the nonprofit, how much money are they getting, political contributions. So obviously, which is a nice way of saying, yeah, if you're donating to the people who are then giving you state money, it would be good for us to know. And so Kocher told me effectively, he didn't need to know that this was going on to know that it's a big problem in the state. And so, the interesting thing about this story that's a little unique compared to other stories that we do at the Center Square is that this is involving misuse of taxpayer dollars, not by the state agency itself, but by the nonprofit that's getting the money. And unlike state agencies, we can't file public records requests with the nonprofit. All their internal communications is private. And so we don't have the same transparency and level of scrutiny that we can give to state government.
Well, it takes a while to get those records, as you probably know more than any other reporter. I filed Center Square here. Yeah. Go ahead.
I filed records requests with the Department of Commerce 6 months ago. I've gotten thousands and thousands of pages of public records, but I still have two of my requests are still active. So there's a lot of
things are redacted, as you know, that comes back, but it's one thing to redact somebody's address and phone number, who's a player in all this, but it's quite another thing to redact whole pages. So to back up a little bit for folks that maybe aren't familiar with the story, it is about $260 million going back to 2023 when this community reinvestment program, which is similar to the Covenant homeownership program, which is tied up in litigation, that are race-based programs that give down payment assistance, large down payment assistance, debt relief in some cases, allowing people to avoid foreclosure, pay off auto loans. I mean, you name it, they can get these chunks of money if you fall into these certain minority groups. So that lawmakers decided on this. They gave Commerce the big chunk of change And then Commerce decided which of these NGOs, including the Seattle Urban League and others, would get that money to send out and sign off on these applications for folks that are asking for a chunk of the change. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And one of the questions to be asked at some point is, so there's misuse of this money, like putting aside the ethical, legal implications of having a state program that only people of certain races qualify for. How do they determine whether it's interesting because I was going through documents just before we started recording. And one of the reports that is kind of leading up to this type of program was how they defined, the people that qualify for this stuff. And they say it's someone who doesn't identify as white. So my question is this, if I identified as a person of color, would I qualify? Like so just for context, if you want to join certain Native American tribes, like be part of their actual nation as a citizen or a member, you have to be able to prove that either through genealogy or through DNA testing. Do they have to do that? That's one of the questions we're going to be asking them, because what happens when some white person wises up to what's going on or has a friend with one of these nonprofits that and is like, hey, I need some help too, right? Can you help out a fellow American who's down on his luck?
And you bring up when I wrote the article on Monday after Brandy's piece came out and had interviewed the realtor, the whistleblower in all this, real estate agent Corey Orvold. She's half Black. And when she started raising questions about it, because as a realtor, she couldn't get her clients access in, right? They did all the work. They did the applications. They took the classes. It was all on the up and up. And then all of a sudden, those people were ghosted in the program. But she's half Black. And so Urban League kept coming back to her and basically saying, since you're only half Black, you don't really have an argument here. You're not entitled to be the whistleblower here because you're only half Black. That is shocking to me, really.
I mean, but that really raises this issue of when being of a certain ethnicity or whatever, being part of a certain identity gets you access to taxpayer dollars. It just creates this very weird situation where how do you determine the identity? And the identity has to be consistent, right? I've always said that if you want to know the true identity of anything, find out who's responsible for it, right? So that's where we're going to be doing follow-up stories, but this is a question I'm going to be asking is that because there's got to be more programs that are race-based qualify, meaning, typically people like me don't, if it's race-based, I'm not going to qualify for it. Unless I decide to identify as that. But that's the question to ask. If I did say, like, I identify and I even put down, let's say on the census or on my driver's license or on employment stuff, and you're being hired, they ask you, or when you're filing for a job application, they say, what race are you? And you identify as something. Who gets to decide that? And so, and also
really good
if the
question.
if the state gets to define it, is that legal? I mean, these are all questions that are going to have to get answered. And because at some point, and it's not just, I just see the opportunity for fraud at some point is going to increase because especially when a lot of stuff can be done online and you get AI, deepfake. I'm just trying to just think of how these things can be exploited. Or if somebody, there's not like, they're not trying to help out a buddy, but somebody gets leverage over somebody and says, hey, here's some blackmail or here's something on you. Do this for me and I won't, you know what I mean? It just, if you control somebody who has access to federal or state tax dollars, that's a huge power leverage to have. And it just,
and I know you,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, TJ, you reached out to the Democratic chairs for a couple of these pieces of legislation that didn't go anywhere this last session, and got a response back that might be somewhat encouraging for Rep. Couture, since it's going to be coming up again for the 2026 session. What did you find out?
Yeah. So Amy Wallen is the chair of the Consumer Protection and Business Committee, and she sent me an email saying, I will definitely hear the bill. She said she would have heard it last time, but she argues that it was introduced too late to be scheduled. Kocher had a different take on X. He just felt like the bill got ignored. But I mean, it's going to be interesting how this is. I think what's interesting about this case is that this is non-white people being discriminated against by other non-white people. So it's a very interesting situation where I think the majority party might get involved on this one. So
it's going to be interesting.
I don't think there's going to be political, because there's no racial conflict or dispute here. It's not a fight over two different groups of two different ethnicities over access to who's qualifying. Like, they're not being discriminated against because of their race. They're being discriminated against allegedly because they're not the daughter, brother, wife, friend, acquaintance. Like, this is nepotism and favoritism that's not based on race. So there's not any racial politics to get into when they say, hey, this money needs to be spent. I mean, we're already talking about a program that just explicitly discriminates against certain peoples like you and me, where we would not qualify for this program if we were honest, right? If we were dishonest, we might. And we had a buddy who worked for one of these nonprofits, but I think that's where I don't see the controversy for people from the majority party saying, hey, this program that's only for certain ethnicities needs to it needs to be done in an ethical manner. And no, you don't get to give it out to your friends and buddies and your siblings or your kids. And no, they don't get to double dip or triple dip and get a $400,000 mortgage assistance for a $600,000 house.
And if ever there is a time for transparency and accountability, when you're talking about a program that is responsible for hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, when other really critical things are not getting funded, to have Commerce have at least